The South Korean leader wraps up his state visit to Kazakhstan and heads to Uzbekistan for stronger cooperation in energy, resources, and technology. South Korea's top office confirms Russian President Vladimir Putin's imminent visit to North Korea, coming at a time when Pyongyang is ratcheting up its military and economic ties with Moscow. U.S. Federal Reserve has kept its key interest rates steady yet again at 5.25 to 5.5%. It signals just one rate cut within the year. It's June 13th, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Min. Having wrapped up his trip to Kazakhstan, President Yoon heads to Uzbekistan, the final leg of his three-nation trip to Central Asia. The president plans to ramp up South Korea's special strategic partnership with Uzbekistan through stronger cooperation in energy and resources, as well as cutting-edge technology. In a written interview with an Uzbek media outlet, Yoon said he aims to strengthen bilateral ties through cooperation in various fields, including energy, infrastructure, core minerals, IT, healthcare, and education. Particularly in IT and semiconductors, Yoon said the two sides will strengthen joint research and development, as well as human exchanges in science and technology. Acknowledging the 170,000 ethnic Koreans living in Uzbekistan, Yoon described it as a brother nation and unique in the region, with it having a special strategic partnership with Korea. He also pledged greater interest and support for Korean expatriates going forward. After his arrival, the South Korean leader will soon hold a banquet with Korean nationals before his bilateral summit with his Uzbek counterpart on Friday. Speaking of Koryo Saram, meaning ethnic Koreans living in Central Asia, we take a closer look at how they have been playing a crucial role in laying the bridge between South Korea and the region. Our correspondent Song Yujin shares their story.
The term Koryo Saram, meaning Koryo people, has two meanings. One refers to those who lived in the ancient Koryo kingdom on the Korean peninsula around 1,000 years ago. The other refers to ethnic Koreans who lived in the former Soviet Union and their descendants. Currently, there are around 500,000 Koryo Saram worldwide, with approximately 300,000 residing in Central Asia.
They call themselves Koryo Saram because they came from Korea before it was divided into North and South. The name Korea is derived from Koryo, also romanized as Koryo.
The first records of Koryo Saram date back to 1864, when, due to economic hardships, around 60 Koreans from Hamgyongdo province crossed the Tumen River to settle in Russia's far east Primorsky Krai. Historians say this marked the start of Korean emigration. More people continued to move to the region, but in 1937, under Soviet leader Joseph Stalin's orders, over 200,000 Koryo Saram suspected of being Japanese spies were deported to Central Asia.
Forced relocation to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan was treacherous. In the initial years, mortality rates were high, especially among children and the elderly, due to the cold, harsh weather, and lack of necessary infrastructure.
Despite these challenges, Koryo Saram persevered through what experts call their diligence. Working on collective farms known as cohorts, they earned recognition and respect in their new homelands. Over time, many broadened their roles in society, becoming doctors, lawyers, teachers, and scientists.
The strong commitment of Koryo Saram to education was truly remarkable. They did everything they could to send their children to college, and if possible, even abroad to places like Moscow. Rather than staying in farming, these parents relentlessly pushed their children to pursue higher education.
What also makes Koryo Saram unique is how they preserve their Korean heritage and identity.
Their identity is maintained not through the most common ways of religion or language, but through traditional cultural practices. Even today, many Koryo Saram families follow traditional Korean customs in their daily lives, such as funeral ceremonies, often more intricately than those living in Korea, maintaining a sense of connection to their heritage.
Having endured more than a century-long journey of resilience and cultural preservation, Koryo Saram serve as a bridge between Korea and Central Asia. 송유진, Arirang News.
The UN Security Council has addressed North Korea's human rights situation for the first time in almost a year, pointing out that the regime is focusing on funding its nuclear weapons rather than helping its people. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pyongyang has the details.
A meeting to discuss human rights abuses in North Korea was held at the United Nations headquarters in New York on Wednesday, despite opposition from North Korea's traditional allies in China and Russia. Under the rotating presidency of South Korea, the UN Security Council convened to shed light on North Korea using its scarce resources to fund nuclear and missile programs, instead of helping its heavily impoverished people. A meeting to discuss such issues at the 15-member council was the first of its kind in 10 months, since August 2023, and only the second since 2017. South Korea's ambassador to the United Nations, Hwang Jun-guk, described the North as a two-headed chariot, driven by nuclear weapons and human rights violations, and said if human rights violations stop, nuclear weapons development will also stop.
The DPRK's exploitation of its citizens, domestically and overseas, including through forced labor, generates revenues that finance its weapons programs. As such, we now call on all UN member states to join us in taking action to bring concrete change that improves the welfare of people in the DPRK and contributes to a more peaceful and secure world.
During the meeting, Kim Kim-hyuk, a North Korean defector who grew up in an elite family, said he learned the truth about his regime at the age of 19, when he went to study in Beijing, hoping to become a North Korean diplomat. He was visibly emotional as he described how the internet enabled him to realize the horrific truth of North Korea, including political prison camps, death from starvation, public executions, and people risking their lives to escape.
Discussing my homeland with students from around the world made me further realize how many basic facts I have been kept ignorant of. And my loyalty for my leaders turned into a deep sense of betrayal. I realized that the Kim family that I wanted to serve were not my heroes, but dictators denying countries countless people's freedom just to build their own power, wealth, and honor.
South Korea's foreign ministry says the government will continue to work on holding more discussions on this issue at a global level to raise awareness about the reality of the North Korean human rights situation and its connection to international peace and security. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
South Korea's top office confirms that Russian President Putin's rare trip to Pyongyang could take place at any time now. Experts say it may further strengthen military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-sil explains.
Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to Pyongyang looks to be imminent. Several media are reporting signs of the regime making preparations ahead of the visit by moving airplanes parked near Pyongyang International Airport's main terminal and decorating Kim Il-sung Square. An official at the South Korean presidential office also confirmed the visit, saying it will take place within a few days. The question comes down to why it is happening now.
The objective of Putin's visit to North Korea is to solidify Russia's relationship with North Korea, which has elevated to alliance like military and economic partnership. Putin and Kim Jong-un met in Russia in last year, so it was expected that Putin would visit back North Korea after the presidential inauguration this year.
With the upcoming visit, experts say the relationship between Moscow and Pyongyang could reach a new level. They say treaties on military and security cooperation could be signed between the two parties aimed at elevating their strategic relations. The last time Putin visited Pyongyang was in July 2000. He met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's father Kim Jong-il and ratified a joint declaration reaffirming their close bilateral relationship. But experts say things have changed significantly in the last 2 decades.
The biggest difference compared to 2000 is the war in Ukraine broke out, where there's a much higher level of military and security cooperation between North Korea and Russia. For Russia, strategic cooperation with North Korea has become very important, and for North Korea pursuing a higher level relationship including military and security cooperation compared to previous economic and scientific technological cooperation with Russia has become its absolute national interest.
He added it's important for the South Korean government to continue sending messages that there mustn't be any military cooperation that violates UN Security Council resolutions. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
U.S. monetary policy makers are holding their interest rates steady for the 7th session in a row and have shared prospects of just one rate cut within the year. Park Go-nu has more.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has maintained its benchmark interest rates once again and is forecasting fewer rate cuts to happen this year than earlier predicted. In a two-day Federal Open Market Committee meeting which ended on Wednesday local time, the committee decided unanimously to keep key interest rates at the 5.25 to 5.5% range. This was the 7th consecutive meeting where the Fed has kept its interest rates at the same level, the highest since 2001. The gap between South Korea's interest rates remained the same with a 2 percentage point difference. The Fed's decision came after U.S. Labor Department released its Consumer Price Index for May earlier in the day. The CPI in May saw an on-year increase of 3.3%, slowing down 0.1% from the previous month. Core CPI, excluding volatile food and energy prices, was up by 3.4% on year, which was 0.1% lower than previous estimates. Though Fed Chair Jerome Powell called the recent inflation report a good reading, he said it would take longer to get the confidence needed for the Fed to loosen its policy.
The most recent inflation readings have been more favorable than earlier in the year, however, and there has been modest further progress toward our inflation objective. We'll need to see more good data to bolster our confidence that inflation is moving sustainably toward 2%.
Also on Wednesday, the Fed predicted that there could be a single rate cut before the end of the year. That's different from its forecast made in March, when 3 rate cuts were predicted. One expert shared his thoughts of when this will possibly happen.
If economic trends continue, I think there's a decent chance the Fed will cut in at least one of these meetings, probably more likely in September. The decision is going to be based on economic factors like we've discussed, trading off inflation versus unemployment. It's not going to be a political decision.
As there are 4 FOMC meetings left in 2024, watchers are now focusing on whether the Fed will cut interest rates before the presidential election in November. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
Korean content startups are stealing the show at NextRise, the largest startup fair in Asia, as they aim for the global market. Our business correspondent Lee Soo-jin went to see what they have to offer.
It's an opportunity for local startups to rise and take off into the global market. Here at this year's NextRise, the largest startup fair in Asia, which is being held in Seoul for 2 days starting Thursday, startups have the chance to not only network but also showcase their latest products and services.
Startups are becoming a new growth engine for our economy, so our government is planning to do all that we can to support them.
The annual event, which has taken place since 2019, features more than 500 domestic and global startups this year. And the largest booth at the event was one run by the Korea Creative Content Agency, a government organization affiliated with the Ministry of Culture that oversees the promotion of local content, one of the nation's most promising export sectors. One of the featured startups is this domestic startup that breaks down language barriers by translating content using AI and converting them into audio-dubbed files in English, Chinese, and Japanese.
We help make content from domestic companies such as SM Entertainment reach global fans, and at the same time help content from overseas companies reach the domestic audience.
Another local startup that is using advanced technology to promote various media content is this data analysis business. One of its services provides in-depth marketing insights by analyzing the sensory responses of audience members with an IoT-based headband as they watch a certain scene. Depending on how the viewer responds to the scene, production companies may decide to cut or keep it.
There is also a large demand overseas for services that can analyze the weak and strong points of various media content. And since ours is the first that's able to analyze viewers' biosignals, we expect to see robust global demand.
And in recognition of how important it is for startups to expand abroad so they can, according to industry insiders, expand revenue streams, Japan was selected as the featured guest country at the fair, the first time this type of selection has been made. With the fair putting a greater focus on overseas markets and providing plenty of networking opportunities, local startups will be able to use this as a chance to make their foray into the global markets. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
For this week's business segment, we take a look at a growing trend in the country where more households are looking for lifelong companions. As a recent survey shows, nearly 1 out of 3 of them owned a pet last year. As our correspondent An Sung-jin reports, it's changing consumption patterns. She joins me here in the studio to explain about this. Welcome, Sung-jin.
Good evening, Jungmin.
Evening. So pets and the economy, what's the link there?
Great question, Jungmin. So before I go ahead and explain the connection between the two, I'd actually like to go over the statistics of it. If we look at the number of households in South Korea that own a pet in 2022, there are more than 5.5 million pet-owning households. And when it comes to Seoul, data from the Seoul Digital Foundation shows that 1 in every 10 households in the capital has a pet. I talked to an expert who provided insight as to why more people want pets.
Owning pets correlates to income, which means that as the income level goes up, people can afford pets. The number of single households increases, and we are entering an aging society, which also increases the likelihood of owning pets. That's why we're seeing the concept of pet humanization, really treating them as a companion.
So as more people have pets, more and more businesses are specifically targeting these pet owners to win over new customers. For example, the Pepemjok in Korean, which literally translates to pet, family, tribe, has been a slogan driving business decisions. As Professor Kim mentioned, the hospitality and tourism industry is trying to meet these demands of increased pet owners. Not only are hotels and resorts becoming more pet-friendly, but one airline has even created its own route where people can travel from Seoul to Jeju with their pets sitting beside them. I've talked to a company that specifically works on providing services for pet owners like a temple stay with your dog.
Our service revolves around providing information on places that are pet-friendly. Our users have doubled for the first half of 2024 compared to last year. There are increased opportunities with pets these days, like a beach for dogs.
According to the Korea Tourism Organization, the market value for Korea's pet industry was $3.4 billion last year, and it is predicted to increase to up to $4.4 billion by 2027.
And Sung-jin, there are other examples in our daily life where we see pets are further integrated.
Absolutely, Jungmin, and I actually visited one of those places. The tourism industry has diversified, but the service industry, such as cafes and restaurants, are also adapting. This franchise cafe has been approved as a testbed by the Trade Ministry under a regulatory sandbox frame that allows the cafe to have pets in food selling areas. The cafe has a separate pet zone and has its own dispenser for dog training pads, water bowls, and trash bags. Since pets can also stay without owners feeling pressured, owners can take their time and enjoy the cafe as well.
I try to go around with my pet, but sometimes we face restrictions, so the places we can go are limited. It's a huge advantage to come here with my pet and comfortably enjoy our time.
But Sung-jin, are there any concerns?
Sure, Jungmin. You may wonder that as the number of pets increase, those abandoned might also increase as well. However, Professor Kim pointed out that as the price of adopting pets increases, the likelihood of abandoning them drops. Compared to 2022, the cost of adopting a pet increased by 1/5 last year. Instead, she brought up a different concern.
I think we need to improve the balance between a properly strict regulation and the opportunity for business expansion. Pets are under the Animal Protection Act, which prevents animal abuse. However, this limits the scope of business expansion that could inherently benefit them.
Finally, where do you think the country's pet industry is heading?
So apart from more businesses opening up to pets, I think that pet owners will be now investing into more premium and high-quality products for their companions.
All right, thanks for filling us in, Sang-jin.
My pleasure as always.
The 11th BTS FESTA is here, held annually on June 13th. The 2024 edition got underway on Thursday from 11 a.m. to celebrate the group's debut with its fans. The event takes place at Seoul Sports Complex in Jamsil until 9 p.m. Various programs have been set up for fans, including themed zones and photo booths. BTS member Jin, who was discharged from the army on Wednesday, hosted special events, including one where he gave hugs to 1,000 raffle winners held earlier this month. Korea is renowned for its gaming culture and hosts one of the biggest esports markets in the world. We take a look at its journey from simple entertainment to cultural phenomenon with celebrity status for its players. Our Yoon has this report.
Esports is no longer just about playing or watching the games. It's about belonging to a community, celebrating shared passions, and embracing a new form of cultural expression. Established in 2018, Seoul's Esports Hall of Fame is the world's only venue dedicated to the history of esports, in particular the 20-year journey in South Korea. It is operated by the country's Culture Ministry and Korea Esports Association.
We aim to boost student engagement in esports and establish standardized regulations for esports to sustain our leading global position.
At the 2022 Asian Games, which took place last year, League of Legends was featured as an official medal sport for the first time, with South Korea clinching the gold. In addition to the South Korean team's impressive skills, the intense passion of fans was also notable. What cultural factors might contribute to this phenomenon? A professor of game studies says that in the late 1990s, as South Korea surged as a global IT powerhouse, the culture of PC방, or internet cafes for gaming, became prevalent. However, he said there are other elements to the phenomenon driven by younger generations.
A new trend called JOMO, or joy of missing out, is gaining traction beyond FOMO, which means fear of missing out. It's about focusing on what you enjoy rather than worrying about what others are doing. Esports is something understood among the younger generations.
And of course there's Faker, the South Korean living legend of esports, inspiring fans worldwide. He was crowned the first ever inductee into the Hall of Legends, a recognition introduced by the developer of League of Legends, Riot Games, this year. A promotional hall in Seoul has turned into a Faker temple, honoring his contribution to the esports scene.
Here at the special tribute area, fans express their reverence for Lee Sang-hyuk, also known as Faker. This worshipping zone shows the profound inspiration Faker ignites within his fans.
Among women born in 1996, I love my wife the most, and among men is Faker. I think Faker's unwavering consistency stands out the most.
Regardless of the outcome of matches, Faker is known for his steadfast attitude to never giving up and unwavering focus on his gaming career. And such attributes serve as examples for the younger generations.
As a longtime fan of Faker, I'm really interested in checking out the books he recommends.
Something that was once simply considered only a game, then transitioned into a sport, and is now evolved into a cultural phenomenon. Yoon, Arirang News.
The heat is increasing day by day. Today's temperature in Seoul rose to 32 degrees Celsius, breaking this summer's record for the third consecutive day. With heat wave warnings everywhere, there were many places where the real field temperature soared up to around 33 degrees. Tomorrow, the daytime temperature in Seoul will rise to 33 degrees. In addition, UV rays will also be strong in the middle of the day tomorrow. Ozone levels are going to skyrocket as well. For your information, ozone gases cannot be filtered even by wearing a mask. Please move as far away from the roadway as possible between 2 to 4 p.m. when the ozone concentrations increase. Tomorrow, morning temperatures will be very similar to today's at around 20 degrees. It will move up to 34 in Daejeon, Daegu, and Gyeongju. On the weekend, rain and showers will be seen everywhere and the heat will ease off. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.